Hi, everyone. Warm welcome. It's great to see people joining and dialing in. I'm just going to give a moment for folks to start to populate the Zoom room, as it were, but it's fantastic to have this time together for what we like to call our Alumni in Action webinar series. And so really, this is something that's very close to our heart here at Oxford Saïd Business School, because we are really interested in supporting organizations as they pursue the strategies that they have developed for impact. And so my name is Dr. Mary Johnstone-Louis. I am a senior fellow in management practice here at the business school, and I co-direct the Leading Sustainable Corporations program, which some of you know well, is one of our online programs originally launched by Professor Richard Barker, who's now at the International Sustainability Standards Board, and then our in-person Oxford Sustainable Business Program, which we were delighted to launch in person last October here in Oxford. And it's a really exciting lineup that we have today, because what we've got is two individuals who have deep experience through their organizations with the online program, and two who were participants in person with us in October here in Oxford, and really fantastic in terms of sectoral diversity, their experience, their roles in their organizations, and also the place they're coming from in the world. And so really looking forward to this. We'll spend a bit of time just at the outset for you to hear from them, hear a little bit about their roles, what they're currently doing, also the program that they know best and the impact that they've seen that program has had in their organization and why that's mattered. And then what we'd really encourage you to do is really have your attention pointed towards the more interactive part of the webinar, because we know that there is so much knowledge in this virtual room in terms of what does it mean to bring insight into action and to bring sustainability and impact into action in large organizations, in startups, and in different geographies around the world. And so what we want to invite you to do is certainly use the chat, use the Q&A. You can use the Q&A at any point, and about 20 minutes through the webinar, I'll start pulling questions, and feel free to, as the presentations are going, go ahead and start populating your questions in there so we can get that conversation already up and running. So please do use the Q&A, and if you've got any issues, go ahead and pop them in the chat, and my wonderful colleagues will be keeping their eye on it. And I'll just pause for a moment and give my colleague Christine Homaki the chance to also introduce herself. She'll be moderating in the background, and she'll be also active on the chat. So I want to give you a chance to have the chance to meet her. Christine, please.
Thank you so much, Mary. And thank you everyone for joining us in this webinar. We do have an exciting session for you today, and our alumni are really happy to share their experiences and let you know how the program has impacted their work. So I hope that you get a lot of value from this session today. I'll be supporting in the background. I'll be in the chat dropping some links, useful resources, and I'll be also telling you a little bit about this program and offer you a chance to dig deeper and know more about the program. So yeah, looking forward to speaking to you.
Super, thanks so much. And I love seeing Danielle, bienvenido. I love that you're calling in from Chile. That's fantastic. And Asim, wonderful, one of our alums calling in from Saudi as well. So please do introduce yourself in the chat. If you're on the call, go ahead and, if you feel comfortable, say your name and tell us where geographically you are today. I know some of us, including one of our panelists, is on a business trip. And so please do tell us where you're calling in from. So let me, without further ado, begin to give you a sense of who's in the room, right? And so we've got, like I said, a really, really interesting mix in terms of experience. Basel is based at the Ministry of Energy in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So currently not in KSA, but joining us in the midst of a busy business trip. So thank you so much, Basel, for joining. I'll pass to you for a moment, just for you to give a short intro around your role and what you do in the Ministry of Energy.
Sure. Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone around the globe, hopefully. I'm Basel from the Ministry of Energy from Saudi Arabia. I started working in the energy field since I graduated from the college with a degree in electrical engineering. I took a master's degree in sustainable and renewable energy. After that, I moved to the ministry in the Sustainability and Climate Change Deputyship. We work in international collaboration, international initiatives, as well as international negotiation on climate matters, and onto clean energy technologies as well. So hopefully that covers the introduction part, Mary.
Perfect.
Looking forward to the panel.
Perfect, perfect. And Basel was one of our in-person participants for Oxford Sustainable Business Program. So you can speak to that as well when the time comes. I'll pass over to you, Claudia González, as well, another of our in-person participants. So please tell us what keeps you busy in your day job, Claudia.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Thank you, everyone, for having me here. Yes, my name is Claudia, and I now work for a startup from Oxford University. So we're local to the university here. We do fusion research. So yeah, very upcoming topic for the energy sector. And my role here is grants manager. So I've been with the company for 3 years now, but my background is in chemical engineering because at the time there was no environmental engineering at the university I studied. So that was the closest I could get to. And I started in the manufacturing and then the recycling business. So now in the energy sector. And yeah, happy to be here. I was Basil's colleague at the program last year, which was fantastic. So yeah, it has been really fun. Thank you for having me.
Looking forward to learn more. Very exciting, Claudia. And I love the diversity we've got within the group. John, over to you. Tell us, what's the day job?
Hey, folks. Good to connect with all of you and reconnect with Oxford, Saïd. So yeah, I have for a long time been on the global executive for Diageo, which is a UK company, but kind of a leader in spirits and beer in many parts of the world. And I have led the European region as my day job. And as of about three and a half years ago, as we pivoted to really dial up our focus on ESG, we created an executive committee that was meant to create and steer all the plans around delivering our goals across a wide range of metrics in the business. And as part of that, we took a decision to have our entire leadership team in the global company go through the program with Mary and Richard, and it was fantastic. And I said to Mary, "You've been a big help to us, and if we can ever help you, happy to show up and wave the flag for the program and talk about our experience." So delighted to be here.
Well, that's the invite, John, and particularly for people to understand how folks are really using these insights in their day-to-day in organizations, right? I think that's what we'll really get into the nitty-gritty in terms of the conversations that I'm guessing will come from our participants as well. So yes, do use the Q&A, as I said, and then Melinda, the one who's staying up the latest for us in Australia, please give us a sense of what your remit is, and delighted to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mary. And like John, I think I did the program in our first year and really enjoyed it, and very happy to support Oxford to promote it really broadly. And I was just looking in the chat, and I think I'm actually joined by Bob, Eugenie, and Nigel, all from Melbourne. So there's actually quite a cohort of us enjoying the winter days and nights in Melbourne. But I am the global head of communities and social performance for Rio Tinto, global mining company with operations in Australia, the Americas, and increasingly in Africa. So ESG issues are pretty critical to us in the business going forward, and obviously with the energy transition, putting our toe in the water around renewables. So, all things in this space are very important to us. My particular focus obviously is around our social license and ensuring that we have strong relationships with communities, and particularly when we're working on lands of Indigenous and First Nations people.
Super. Thank you so much, Melinda. So we're covering really quite a few bases here, everything from social license to energy to consumer goods. So really, really looking forward to the conversation. And Melinda, I thought I might start with you in terms of just some of the reflections that you even were beginning to share with us as we were just preparing together on the webinar in terms of what was the experience of Rio of coming into this program, what was the why, and then, you know, anything that you'd like to share in terms of how you're seeing those insights be turned into action.
Absolutely. So the why was pretty clear for the organisation. So I started in 2021, but you may be aware that in 2020, the company really went through a crisis period as a result of some actions that had taken, which resulted in the destruction of some really important and precious rock shelters, Indigenous rock shelters in Australia. And that resulted in the CEO standing down, along with two other executives, a new CEO being appointed and a completely new executive committee. And one of the CEO's first mandates was really to set about a culture shift in the organisation, and a culture shift to where he wanted his leadership team and full workforce actually to be much more in tune with the external world. I think there'd been some criticism and reflection that the company had become very inward looking, for it really to reach out and understand what stakeholders are saying, what's happening in the external world, and for its leadership to really understand better, not just financial performance and technical mining performance, the engineering side, but what really to unpack what environmental, social, natural capital is all about. So we were tasked with finding a program that would do that for our leadership cohort. We actually did a request for proposal, so it was quite a formal process. We went out to 17 universities globally and received, I think, a half a dozen requests, proposals back. And on the assessment, Oxford by and far stood above everybody else. So we were really happy to work with them. We tailored the program a little bit because I think the live program is 6 weeks. We did a bit of a pilot with 10 of our employees who, you know, very, very busy day jobs, who just said they got through it, but just said, wow, that was tough. That's a lot of work. So we spread the program over 12 weeks. We gave everybody 2 weeks per module. And it was, you know, great that Oxford were flexible enough to do that. And we tweaked one of the modules, I think, to really focus on Indigenous relationships, given where we come from, and cultural heritage, and a little bit more on human rights. So we put a flavour to the program, which was Rio Tinto. The first year we had 125 people, and then there was such strong demand for it that every year since we've done sort of a double cohort of 250. So I think we've got over 500 people now who've been through the program. And today was talking to one of my team who works in cultural heritage actually, and he didn't know I was doing this session, didn't know that I'd even been thinking about it, and said, oh, we were talking about a piece of work he was doing, and he said, I did the Oxford, I'm just finishing it. He's doing it now. I did it in the first year in 2022. And he said, I've just finished the Oxford program and I've done my assignment on, you know, valuing things other than, you know, financial value, economic value. And he's just finished a piece of work around the cultural value of water. So with the cultural heritage work that he's doing, we are pretty understanding of the importance of land to Indigenous and land connected people, but I think we've always just seen water as, you know, an ecosystem service or an environmental component of what we do, and not really understanding the importance of, you know, the cultural value of water. So that was what he'd done his project on, and today he sort of came up with it. We've done a guidance note to try and help our leaders around the world, you know, really dig deep and understand that cultural value of water. So just a little example, but there are many of those sorts of examples across the group. And I think in general, it's helped the company or the leaders that have done the program to have this shared language of how we talk about things now. And all of us, I think, have known parts of it, but to put the pieces all together and to have that shared language and sort of excitement around this, and a little bit more confidence to challenge management on some of their decisions, business decisions.
Yeah, I think that confidence and that shared language is what we keep hearing is so key. And I think what you've brought out is really interesting. And I'd love to get into more depth on that with the rest of our panelists, is just this idea that actually both the online Leading Sustainable Corporations program and the in-person programs, they really push towards one thing, which is your action plan, right? So we know that all of you who are on this program or on this webinar today, you're there because you're in organizations and you're trying to figure out, where do you allocate scarce resources? Where do you allocate your time? How do you motivate your team? How do you make the business case? How do you also respond and build a strategy in the face of complexity? And so I thought the emphasis on the action plan is just really exciting. And Basel, I might pass to you. I know Basel does have to leave us a little bit early, so I want to make sure we get you in, Basel, for you to just share a little bit about your, first of all, you were here in person, you came to Oxford Sustainable Business Program, and what's it been like for you going back and going into your role? Tell us about your action plan and what you'd like to share, what you perhaps wish you had known before coming in as well.
Sure. Thank you, Mary. I think, let me give you a bit of a story. I'd like to share some stories. So the first time I heard about the sustainable business sustainable program from Oxford University, I was looking with my friend for a course that suits our role within the ministry. So we start searching, and I remember Oxford didn't have that program. So the first thing I saw, that this is the program where I would like to go. It suits our cause. And why do we want to go there? It's because we are in a government. We work in a sustainability and climate change field. However, we don't know what is going on and how is the business and how is the private sector is thinking about sustainability. How do they meet their targets? How do they shape their governance, their policies within their companies or private sector? So we decided to go there, and I attended the program with my colleague, and it was really beyond what we have expected. The action plan actually drive us to think even more. What do we think? Especially from the government side, the action plan wasn't that easy. Probably on a private sector, you have a target, you need to meet it. How do you achieve it? You set a strategy for that. However, in the government, it's a different case. I started doing my action plan on a local policy, on a national policy within the kingdom, to start establishing that. However, during my time from the course till now, I'm in a new position as an acting manager for international initiatives. So I'm no longer working on a national policies. I'm working on international collaboration and international initiatives. So in the past, earlier this week, we just announced in the kingdom a collaboration with UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, as part of the action plan I was actually working on. It's the what and who, how, and the when. So part of the who, this one of the major stakeholders within the region, not only in the region and globally, is UNEP. They actually work and support countries in implementing their environmental and climate policies, help them build their climate policies. So the first thing that we picked is having a map. What do we want to achieve in international collaboration and international initiatives? Is actually to work with different countries from the global north and the global south, and institutions and organizations, especially with well-established and well-organized institutions, one of which is UNEP. And the memorandum of understanding was just signed this Sunday, and we're now trying to think, how do we actually bring it up into an action with an action plan. That's on the front of the action plan. On the other hand, the material that we have engaged with during our 5 days in Oxford was extremely useful, not only just to develop an action plan, but actually just to really engage with it within your work and deliver this message and transfer the knowledge that we have taken from Oxford University into not only our work, but actually other universities within the kingdom. As part of my work, I go around certain universities, certain student clubs based on request. And excuse me for that, I've used some of the slides referring back to Oxford that on certain terminology, certain stories that you have shared with us during our course, because it was really something touchable that you can see, that you can feel. Because without a story, you wouldn't understand. Sometimes it's rigid, really harsh way of delivering it if you don't have a story to tell. So the stories that you have told us from that was actually delivered to students within the kingdom. So thank you for that. If you have another question, Mary, I would love to answer. Otherwise, I'd really sincerely apologize for not continuing this panel.
That's okay. That's okay, Basel. I know you were just jumping in between meetings, so thank you for joining us. If there's any questions that come up in the chat, very happy to either feed them back to you, or we can pick it up for you when you go. But thank you, Basel. Really appreciate joining us.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Good moment to pass over to you, John. So thank you, Basel. And really, John, I think it's such a great conversation that just emerged in the chat as well, is, how is this program useful to the majority of people in organizations who actually don't have ESG or sustainability in their job title, right? And I think it's a great story in terms of thinking about your role and how you came into your role on the executive side, and thinking about how do we get our organization up to speed.
Yeah, I saw that question, and I'm glad it came up because I don't have a background in sustainability. So that was kind of exactly the challenge that I had when I first took on the reins of some of this work in the organization. And like just the Diageo Oxford Saïd story basically went along the lines of as we came out of COVID, we just had a strategic review and said, look, the world just got put in a blender. We've been tactical and executional for a couple of years. Let's step back and look at what's really important right now. And digital transformation and ESG, were the two areas we looked at and said, this is where the most energy is going to be, where consumers are going to be focused, and where we think we can make a difference in terms of what the organization does. And at the time, what we recognized is, like a lot of companies, we put really big goals in place for 2030, massive changes in terms of our own organization, impact on supply chain, water, carbon, other things around closer to home topics for us, like responsible alcohol consumption, inclusion and diversity. But we were proud of the goals. We didn't really have the plan how to get there. And therefore we said, we actually need to go after this with a lot more focus and energy. And one part of that was creating this subset within the global exec, which was around how do we deliver against our ESG goals, which we called Spirit of Progress. And one part of the plan that we agreed was to have a big upgrade in terms of awareness and capability around leading an agenda that goes across financial, social, natural, capital. And Oxford Saïd came high on the list again for the same reasons that Melinda mentioned. We did it online, so it was great digital tools, and you guys were super flexible with us. I did the pilot. We tinkered, changed it, stretched it out a bit to make it digestible for our leaders, and then we got on with it. And I would say the two things, and I can talk a little bit more about what's happened and what I think will happen in the future, but a couple of things that came out of it. For me personally, back to the question on your background, I, as a line manager, took away a really structured mental framework for how to lead on ESG. And we all have been, or most of us have been, trained through our careers on financial management, how we influence capital and profitability, how we measure it, how we report on it, all those aspects. But I just didn't have that toolkit for these other aspects that I was expected in a modern world to have stewardship over as a senior leader in a company. So I found that I just found that super useful to be able to look at the world through that lens. And then if you blew it out to the people who went through the program at this stage, I just checked the numbers. There's about 520 leaders in Diageo that have gone through the full program over the last 3 years. And that's essentially every single leader who gets to a certain level in Diageo automatically gets enrolled in the course. And for those individuals, what I really like, back to the theme of action and implementation, is the homework is, by the end of the course, you have your plan for your organization that you can take and start to implement. And that has been very useful for our leaders because they've consistently come back and said, this isn't theory, it's theory, but then layered on top of that is, what am I going to do with it now as a leader? And that's reverberated through the business and galvanized focus on implementation and action. And interestingly, I would have most of the people who had gone through that course at one stage or another, make some sarcastic comment to me about how hard it was, how much work it was on the weekends or out of hours, all of these things. And it was tough. But then we went back and looked, and over 250 of them have posted on LinkedIn once they graduated about having completed the course. So hard work, but a lot of pride when they came out the other side of it. And we've actually seen big spikes in engagement throughout the organization around delivering our Spirit of Progress goals, bigger than any other shift we've had in our kind of people survey the last couple of years. And that's all been super high impact. And I'll come back in the further Q&A, Mary, and talk a little bit more detail about what those plans look like and what's actually happened in the business.
That sounds great. That's fantastic to hear. And I think it's really interesting because, as the question in the chat suggests, very few people are in leadership in organizations right now with the kind of business training that actually equips them to navigate, issues around the cultural value of water, right? Or thinking about, the work that you've done on thinking about regenerative agriculture at Diageo, or thinking about how you work with farmers. So the fact is that these are Oxford programs, so they are rigorous, but they are action focused. And the way I think about it, in the work and the research that I do, is they're really bringing a shared language, and they're bringing folks up to speed, and almost in a way, sometimes retrospectively filling a gap of where sometimes business education just hasn't been able to bring people to that level historically. And I think that's changing, but I think being conversant and confident on those issues and seeing really crucially how they link to strategy, and they're not just the remit of one singular department off to the side, is really, really key. And we'll talk about that in the Q&A as well. So Claudia, I want to give you a chance because you're in such a fascinating startup, you're in such a fascinating sector, and I love that you came to the in-person Sustainable Business Program really thinking about how you can change the operations of what is already a very ambitious team in terms of their environmental impact.
Yes, correct. Yeah, I came in as a local almost because I live here in Oxford. But yeah, engaging with the university and with the program, it taught me a lot of things, even on, there were the slides. Yeah, that was the cohort that we had in October. It was a fantastic mix of people coming from all over. And as you can see, there were some activities outside the classroom as well, which were really fantastic and really well thought of, that came with objectives that then we were able to implement further along in and take away for our own companies and our own strategies and our own action plans, as it was mentioned by the other panelists, right? Yeah, I think coming in as a local, it just gave me another overview and insight of a lot of things that we could be doing, even though I do work for a company that in its core, it's basically fantastic research, fantastic engineering, and this is first world pioneering industry, right? Just in a field that if everything goes well, and if successful, it can change how we all live, right? It will bring the clean energy closer to all of us, and regardless of our geographical stand or our politics, that if we bring fusion to the world, then this will help everyone. However, for us, coming as an SME as well, I think what I liked about the program is that it merged not only the sustainability side, but also the financial side, which we were kind of missing in the company. And since I was in the program, the company has had a strategy shift. So it came aligned on good timing, because we were discussing in the course, for example, how to have also a story and an action plan that could align your objectives to actually delivering in a timely manner. And the company has done now the same. And House, for example, has now hired people on the communication side, this is fantastic, and it's good, because sometimes we do have so much innovation, but then it's hard to communicate effectively to everyone, right? So yeah, we have done that as part of the strategy change in the company. And we also have had a bit more of an insight in how we do things more organized and more how do we deal with a better system. Because one thing we learned, I mean, it was not part of the course itself, but it came about that we did not rise to the level of your goals, that we fall to the levels of our systems, right? So this was very eye-opening, in that if we have good systems everywhere, then it's easier to follow up, to do the following, to start the actions, and to know what comes after another thing, right? What action would you need to go to do first, and then what impacts does it have, and how can you move forward with it, right? So yeah, the program helped us to bring together not only the sustainability side that we were working on, but also on the business and the financial side, how they are both important, both equally important, actually, and you cannot lose sight of one or the other, right? Those are two precious resources that you need to build up together and not lose sight of one of the other. So yeah, it was fantastic help. And on the strategy side here at the company, and then myself as well, we're trying to work through our action plans. So it's been great having that as a reminder that it can be done, and it can be done in an orderly manner, and and with an action plan in place.
Absolutely. Well, and I think one of the things that we do at the very end of the program is think about how particularly you will share your action plan with others. And that's half the work, actually, as you were saying, John. That's what populates these ideas and these initiatives throughout an organization, is having that deck, whether it's just 3 to 5 slides, so quick, so clear, that you can bring your team on board with. And I think that's really the difference between it being that idea of it, rising to the level of your goals, or falling to the level of your systems. And we all are working in complex organizations. And I just wanted to open up the question that came up in the chat. And I know that, John, you've got some more bits to share as well, but I thought, just in the spirit of encouraging folks to put questions in, there was a great question that came up through the Q&A, which is, of course, sustainability exists in a broader context of policy, of regulation, of geopolitics, right? And we've certainly seen some big shifts in 2025 in terms of the language and narrative and the way that companies are thinking and talking about sustainability. And so I just wanted to open it up to the group, really, to you, Claudia, who you're based here in the UK, but of course, energy is such a global issue. John, such a global business, very consumer facing, and Melinda, Rio is right at the heart of so much in terms of critical minerals and the energy transition. So are you seeing the sustainability focus shift? What are you seeing in terms of what's useful for the people in your organization right now? So this is a question from John Goodwin. So thank you so much. And I'll just allow you to kind of take turns and just riff on what's happening in 2025 so far in your teams, in your organization? Melinda, you want to go for it?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. Yeah.
Thank you.
Because I think, earlier this year, after the US elections, it was a question I think that was rattling around in a lot of our leaders' heads as well. And it was a question that was directly asked. We have a sort of virtual leadership discussion about the top 100 leaders with the CEO and ExCo members. And it was a question that was directly asked. And I think it was broad ESG, but it actually was more deliberately around diversity and inclusion. And the question is, we operate in the United States. We'd seen other big organizations pulling back on some of their commitments. But it was actually great to have our CEO step up and say, nothing's changed for us. We have impeccable ESG as one of our 4 business objectives, and that is not going to change for us. And the reason for that is we actually see this as imperative to the long-term sustainability of our business. It's good for business. We're not doing it because it's, the flavor of the day or something that, a fad. We're actually doing this because it's a fundamental driver to our performance. We have to have the consent and the acceptance of communities where we operate to be able to operate effectively. We have to operate in a way that's responsible and stewards of the environment, even though that's a challenge in a mining industry because we are, no doubt, mining a non-renewable resource. So how do you do that in a way that sort of trades off the fact that we're going to take something out of the ground and out of the earth? What do we sort of trade off, and what's the value that we can create in other ways to be able to do that? So his response was very positive, I felt, and good for the rest of us, I think, that really feel, this is a strong value of the company, that if we just can't stop doing this, it doesn't matter, what the politics of the day are. This is imperative and fundamental to us being a successful business in the longer term.
I think that comes through really clearly, and it comes through clearly in the action plans from Rio. Actually, interesting, Melinda. And I think, John, it makes me think of the conversations that I've had with some of the participants from Diageo. And, again, thinking about the way that Diageo thinks about your business from a farming perspective, from a water use perspective, all of these they're not something that are a matter of a trend, right? They're a matter of actually something that is fundamental to the way that you think about how you operate. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it feels like, there are some things that they're just part of the DNA of the company and part of the mission, and you can't really afford not to have a focus there. But the situation's different than when we started 3 or 4 years ago. It feels like, you have political change, also a lot of economic change. Like a lot of our markets have had slowdown. So then you got a lot of pressure on, okay, well, what are you investing in and what pace? And if part of that is going into your sustainability goals, you get the magnifying glass put on things. And I actually, about a year ago, I handed the baton over on the ESG, or the exec accountability I had, to another president. So we rotate that around. So I haven't been following it day to day, but I just happen to have been talking to a lot of CSOs over the last couple of weeks at different events and asking the same questions you asked. And the broad feedback I've heard is that people are talking less about their goals and they're announcing less goals for the future. But the amount of work being done to deliver on what's already committed to is pretty strong and sustained, despite what we read in the headlines. So I would take some comfort from that from across industry. And then closer to Diageo, yeah, I mean, again, it's a bit like the Rio Tinto example. Like, we sell alcohol, so like it is absolutely our license to operate will not be there. Many countries have had prohibition through history where you are not allowed to make, produce, or sell or consume alcohol. So we don't assume we have any right to exist permanently unless we're playing a role where we are seen as a responsible part of the community we're in. So all of the work that we do around that absolutely continues, accelerates. Inclusion and diversity is interesting. Like the purpose of Diageo is celebrate life every day, everywhere. It's because people usually socialize while they drink. So that's what we're about. And, you know, frankly, that's an inclusive statement. It's kind of in our DNA that, yeah, you celebrate, you pull people together, you don't separate them. So those type of things are just in the mission of the company. And I wouldn't downplay some of the headwinds that I'm sure many of you face in your day jobs. But I feel like underneath those choppy waters, it's clear the direction of travel, and that continues.
Absolutely. Yeah. Claudia, what have you seen? And I noticed there's a question for you in the chat as well in the Q&A around just thinking about external versus internal stakeholders and the ways that your plans, having an action plan actually changes the way that you engage with internally and externally.
Yeah, I think we don't need to change how our view on the long run, because, for example, we know that taking care of resources is actually profitable, right? If we want to be here in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 15 years' time, then we do need to take care of our resources, right? And it does not need to be against anything that we're living just right now. Maybe we engage differently at the moment, but then on the long run, you need to always keep side of how to take care of your resources right now so that they could last on the longer run, right? Same as with diversity. Diversity creates resilience. So what we're trying to do is to have businesses that are here in 5, 10, 15 years or more, right? So we might need to be a bit more careful at the moment in how we communicate, for example, with external shareholders, but it doesn't mean that we need to change the way we think about our resources or the way we think about our people. I think the diversity makes the community stronger, and the resources, we need to just keep track of them so that we can have them later on and for future generations as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just share an anecdote. So Richard Barker and I have a book coming out in November this year. So it's the Financial Times Guide to Sustainable Business. John was kind enough to write an endorsement. So thank you so much, John. On the record, thanks for you. Really appreciate that. And the thinking behind that book, and certainly Richard's kind of impetus when he was first, and he was really that first kind of person who was really thinking about and delivering the original Leading Sustainable Corporations course before I had the chance to be involved, is really this idea that separating sustainability and impact from the core business, it really is never a win for anyone, right? Because it brings a lot of waste in terms of resources. It brings goals that actually we won't be able to deliver. It really disadvantages and demotivates teams. And I think what's been exciting about the book that we've put together has been this concept that actually really sustainability is about, first of all, having a very clear view of what are the social and environmental systems on which your business impacts and depends, right? So for each of the three of you, it's very clear. There would be different ones for each of the three of you, but certainly the top 2 or 3 social or environmental systems on which your business relies are utterly crucial to your ability to continue to create certainly financial value, let alone any other kind of value. And to really then begin to build your strategy with that at the heart of it, right? That actually that's what we're talking about when we're talking about sustainable business. And by that, we also mean there are opportunities there, right? There are risks, of course, but there are also opportunities. And I love, John, some of the examples that you have had from Diageo, just thinking about yes, you sell alcohol, of course you do, and that's your heritage business and really core, but you're non-alcoholic sectors, in terms of the products that you're engaging with that are for people who don't choose to consume alcohol, whether it's for religious conviction or health reasons or whatever it may be. I mean, that's been a really dynamic part of your business, and certainly one that, you know, a lot of our participants who come from parts of the world where that's not how you socialize they've really appreciated. And so I think it's interesting how often really understanding where the needs are, where the opportunities are, and just thinking about your business differently, right? I mean, I think probably 20 years ago, if someone told you that Diageo would be in that space, it might have been a bit of a surprise.
Totally. Yeah. And like it really is music to my ears listening to what you say, Mary, because I mean, one of the last points, like in terms of my learning from the whole experience, I just wanted to share, which reinforces where you and Richard have gone in your thinking, is that the essential part of all of this work is that it has to be the day job and the core mission for the enterprise. Because if it's not, if it's functionally led, but not led across the business, if it's seen as something nice to have on top of more important goals around financials, in publicly listed companies, it'll just get burnt off because there's so much pressure to deliver goals that people are always prioritizing. So one of the things that I've learned is that the way we kind of rewired Diageo around this stuff was very much around how it is part of every part of the core process of the business. So our capital planning process for the next 10 years bakes in every dollar needed to get to the net zero commitment that we have on scope 1 and 2. Our investor relations strategy and capability uses what we're doing on ESG as a way to compel investors in terms of their belief in investing in the Diageo shares. The work that we're doing with consumers and customers is around how do you take, you know, we just had Bailey's become the first major spirit brand globally to get B Corp accredited. Okay, that's great. Now, what do you say to Tesco about what they can do with that brand that promotes their sustainability goals? What do you say to consumers so you get a price premium or win market share? And on and on and on, so that this really becomes part of what the enterprise is trying to achieve, not any kind of functional or separate goal. And if there was one thing I would leave the participants here, who if you're at an earlier stage on this journey, whether you are a specialist in a function or a line manager, bring an enterprise mindset to what you're doing and ensure that where you lead on ESG is exactly in line with what the board and the directors of the company are really focused on and trying to achieve. Because if you can harness that, you're likely to win. If not, you're likely to be deprioritized and not get as far as you want to go.
Yeah, such a good point. You know, it's fall in love with the business first, right? And really understand the business and what it's trying to do, and then thinking about the inevitable reality that it will impact and depend on social and environmental systems all the way through, all the way down, and getting really creative about how those link up. I saw there's just in the last kind of 5 minutes, I wanted to give, you know, anyone who'd like to engage, but we had a particular question and it kind of made me think, Melinda, it might be in your wheelhouse around reporting, and what are the things that you report on? What are the things that who cares about which kinds of metrics, right? Who are you kind of speaking to? And, you know, happy for you to speak to that. And I know a very short time to cover all that you do with communities and social.
No, I'll just pick a little example. So, and it's something that obviously we need to do to improve our own business, but it's of real interest to investors, particularly where the business has come from 5 years ago, really had lost social license and really lost, you know, that trust of communities, particularly Indigenous groups. So I guess one thing we have been working on over the last couple of years is how do we measure our social performance? And it's something that was in the program, you know, a lot about measurement and reporting. And we sort of sat back and said, well, you know, we can do lots of, you know, sort of monitoring from within the business about, you know, how many widgets we do or how many people we talk to and et cetera, et cetera. But really the views that we need are the views of the communities themselves. So over the last couple of years, we've embarked on doing a global program of perception monitoring. So based in social science from CSIRO, which is the Australian Scientific Organisation. This is where this methodology first began. Quite scientific, really based in surveys and asking questions at the grassroots level in our communities, but then the analysis and the piece that goes and sits behind that is really quite complex and robust. So I think in terms of monitoring, that's the biggest change and shift that we've had in the organisation. And I said it's important for us because we need to hear the views of the community in order to change and respond to that. So it's not just a data collection exercise. So we can say we're collecting views. It's how do we bring that in, integrate it into our business? And our operational leaders have been the ones actually that have said, this is amazing. Like, they are engineers, so they like a good number. So, you've now got data on which to base your operational decisions going forward. And if you've been getting feedback from communities that says, that vibration or the noise or the dust, whatever the issue is at a particular business, they can then hone in on that. They can take action. And then as a result of that, next time they go out, they can see the result and the improvement in the survey. So I think that's one from my particular space in sort of measuring and monitoring what society is thinking about us and using that to embed that in the business. And that's now being incorporated into our global short-term incentive plan. So, to your point around incentives and how do you really integrate that into the business, that is included now in our short-term incentives from last year, actually. The one other piece, I know we're sort of running short of time, so I want to give others a go, but the piece that we're still working on is around how do we, when we're doing making business decisions, mergers and acquisitions or new projects, how do we really have an evaluation model that equally considers the financial along with the human, social and natural capital? And that is something we know we need to do and have done a bit of work on, but haven't cracked that nut yet. So I'll leave that one open and would love to hear from anyone that actually has done that.
Great. Anything either of you, John or Claudia, would like to add on the measurement piece? I know measurement is certainly one we could spend a lot more time on. It's probably worthy of its own webinar. Anything you'd want to add in just?
I think, Melinda, you sound like an expert. I mean, definitely the auditing trail is complicated and tough on this stuff. And I find that a little bit frustrating. I find a lot of energy goes into how do we measure what we've done versus doing it. So I don't know. I think there's more leadership, my sense is, required from the finance function on how to make it reliable, but effective and fast. And it still feels like complex right now.
Yeah, so true. So true. Claudia, anything from you?
Yeah, definitely. It's very complex, as John is saying. But I want to mention, for example, we have engaged with environmental consultants for to release our carbon footprint reports. And they sometimes have the double specialty of waste reduction and the carbon footprint specials, right? So the waste reduction goes along with the costs of your operation. So it's a double win that you're trying to streamline operations and at the same time boosting the sustainability side, right? So there are some markers, and you could tweak the markers depending on your company itself. You can do them by employee, you can do them by square footage of if you have different facilities. You could do it by how many products are you manufacturing. So whatever impact measurement it works better for you, you could or that you could understand better, that goes better with the industry you're working with, right? But yeah, it was an eye-opener for me to see that it went hand in hand, the cost reduction and the sustainability side, just in one operation there.
And when that happens, that's great. And I think that, one of the key things that your comments all bring to the fore is something that I put a short piece that I put in a Forbes column earlier on this year. And the key piece is around not just that you're gathering the data and that you've got the information, but who's using it, right? Who in the organization is using it? And this is to your point, Melinda, and yours, John. It's the trail can be very, very complex on getting causality clear on, what's the corporate action that led to certain outcomes. The key piece is who's asking for this information and what makes a decision useful for them. So fantastic. I am going to pass over to Christine. Christine Homoki, you tend to know the folks in the room even better than I do. I love my students, and I know my students, and I noticed that you've been connecting with all kinds of folks in the chat. And I just wanted to pass you over for a few minutes to close us. And thank you, Melinda and Claudia and John, for being fantastic panelists. And I'm really thrilled to hear all that you've been doing since you first got connected. So over to you, Christine.
Thank you so much. Oh, can you see me now? Right. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And thank you so much to our lovely panel. It's been really inspiring listening to all your stories. And I hope our audience got a lot of value. Did you hear all of those stories? I hope you're all feeling inspired. And I hope that this time that we spent together, I know 1 hour is very short. And I hope that actually inspired you to learn a little bit more on how to go further with this learning. We have a program that is happening in September, and we're very excited to offer you the second iteration of this program, which launched for the first time last October. And we are very excited to let you know that the cohort is forming really well. We are looking forward to welcoming another diverse cohort of sustainability leaders and professionals from all kinds of industries and from all over the world who are like-minded and who are committed to really making an impact through their business. This program is brought to you by two powerhouses within Oxford University. It's the Saïd Business School. We have been awarded Financial Times sustainable business education, responsible business education very recently. So we know what we're talking about. We really walk the talk and really weave in sustainability in our curriculum. And we bring in the expertise in business management and strategy innovation. And our partners for this program is the Smith School of Enterprise and Environment, and they bring in the scientific research, their world-class expertise on the environment and science of climate change. And we are also supported by Oxford Net Zero, which brings in all the practical aspects on how to make your business net zero and sustainable, and bringing in that practical insight. So this is a program that is very immersive, very hands-on. It's a 5-day program. And as Mary mentioned earlier, what we promise is for you to walk away from the program with an actionable plan that you can readily implement, take back to your organization and take action on. So if this is exciting for you, I invite you to save this screenshot, take a screenshot, or use the QR code and get in touch. I'd be happy to have conversations with you to understand your needs, to understand your background. I know there was a few questions about whether this is suitable for someone who doesn't have experience. Absolutely, we're happy to support you as long as your vision is about creating more impact and sustainability in your company. Yeah, we can talk about those things. And myself and my team, my colleague's name, Tonil, is also here. You can email either of us and we'd be happy to support.
Thanks so much, Christine. Thank you. Well, it's right on the hour, so let's respect everyone's time, and thank you all so much. And I have to say, this has been such a great reminder for me about why we do this, right? So it's around empowering organizations, bringing the knowledge we have here to real life. And so thank you, Claudia, Melinda, and John, for just giving us a little peek on what's been happening in your own companies. And thanks so much. Thanks, Christine. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks, Christine.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Everyone.
Thank you.